Welcome to the class on energy finance. Before I forget, there's a important subject that everyone that's sitting and listening to me is now thinking about. I know that. And that is, Dr. Malik, when is the exam going to be? Well, I can almost read your mind. That's what says, come on, Dr. Malik, tell us when the exam is going to be. I had not forgotten it. I thought that at the appropriate time, I'll reveal that big secret for obvious reasons. That is, because you have to plan what comes, not only for the exam, but what date would it be and what happens after that, so that you can purchase, maybe if you're from overseas and going home for vacation, or meet your parents, and during the summer, you need to book your flights and plan your summer if you're from here, or your research projects, and so on and so forth, or internship if some of you have got an internship with some companies. So you need to have some idea. Now, in fairness to you, I think it's about time I give you the date. And the date is April 28th, which is a Thursday, okay? And we'll follow the same guidelines that we had done in the past. When I say we, that means John, UT, and I will follow exactly the same guidelines and with excellent results. And this is the third time we'll be performing those, because last year we did it the same way, an online exam, and the year before, and the same thing, it was online. So all the instructions on regarding the exam, I'll give you some just now, just to give you familiarity with what will go on. And also they will be attached to the exam questionnaire, which will be pretty much the same what I'm going to tell you now, but maybe for clarity, I might add a couple of points there, so you will have that in front of you, okay? Having said that, again, I repeat, the exam as I scheduled it will be on April the 28th for the energy finance class, which is, April 28th, a Thursday. And the timing will be the same as we normally would have for a class. It's 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. That means it's 3 hours. To indicate to you that how simple is this exam going to be, and has always been, rarely, sometimes one or two students take all 3 hours for the exam. A number of them finished the exam over the years, not this online, but over the years I've taught this course, in about half the time, an hour and 30 minutes, many of them. And they just, when I'm in person, they're giving it, they hand the paper, and then they leave. And in this case, I'll tell you how that will happen, like we did it last year. But it'll be 3 hours, okay? But if you say, well, I need a little more, I'm not going to say, no, come on, hurry up. No, I'll say, take more time, but not too much more time. And I'll be available to all of you throughout that period of 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. on that date of April 28th. I'll be available. You could send me an email, or you could call me, okay? Either way, doesn't matter. The phone line would be open. And rarely, if ever, there has been a need by students to contact me. But again, if you need to, I'm available, and so will John, your TA will be available to you. He'll be on standby, meaning he'll be available from the time that you're giving the exam. So do not be concerned at all about what would, and how would it be normally. The exam, John will send it to you, the TA, at that time around 4 o'clock or so. And then you'll be on your own to give the exam. And when you finish it, you please send me a copy, email a copy to me, which I will print, of course, which I always do. And do not forget to copy one more. No, make a copy for John also. Please do that. And thirdly, keep one copy for yourself in case through the transmission process, it may not arrive here or with John or I or both. So you'll at least have one physical copy for yourself or otherwise. So is there no way that the exam can be lost? That's just a precautionary thing. I hope you understand that. Keep one for yourself also. Okay. And as I said, the most time people finish it in half the time. Does not mean you have to. You have the complete 3 hours at your disposal. Take your time. I'll be available for all of that time. And John will be too. Okay. Now, I took down some notes to see if there's anything less that I have. I said the exam answers directly to me and send the exam answer to me and a copy to John and keep a copy for yourself. There will be, and furthermore, important point is, and the semester ends, I don't know, I don't want to give you two dates because that'll be confusing, but after the exam, there will yet be another class that will be on April the 5th. No, April the 5th. That's right. April the 5th. Let me make the correction. I made a mistake. Oh, no. There's a mistake. I've got it written right, but I'm talking wrong. There will be a class in May the 5th, which is a Thursday. So don't think because you've given the exam, there is no subsequent class. No, there shall be, and there will be, and there must be a class on May the 5th, which is a Thursday. So like now, you'll get the video from John and all those things, you will have that, okay? The exam is on the April the 28th, and the class will be then also on the 5th of May, which is a Thursday. As I'm going through the things I've written for myself to not forget to tell you, exam instruction will be given to you with the exam itself. There'll be, it's the same thing, except that on that I may, in the instructions, I'll give you my email address again, where to send the exam. It'll be written in front of you, and John's email and my phone and John's phone. Those are the kind of things that you will be having in front of you if you ever need to contact us, or at least you should have them where to send the exam. The email address will be there. And we had zero problems concerning the exam in the last 2 years or 3 years, never. So I don't think there should be any now. So don't be worried about it. It'll be very straightforward. And the exam essentially will be on a subject that we discuss in class. That's it. Review your notes. It's closed book. I hope. I trust you. I trust you that you will not open your notes because the tapes are with you. And you say, well, okay, I can look at the tapes and give the exam from there. No, please. If in the graduate students, I can't trust, who in the world will I trust? Or undergraduates, come on. Part of education is also this, trusting, giving the confidence to the structure, the teacher, the Dr. Don't worry, trust us. We will not violate the trust. Never. If somebody trusts you in any regard, do not disappoint that person. I urge you, don't disappoint me. Okay. And there are other ways I can find out if somebody's copying directly from from the notes from the book. That would be not acceptable. Of course, if you memorized it and you remember them and not looking at the book notes that you took, no, that's okay. You can look at it before the exam, not during the exam, not during the exam. Before, you can do whatever you want to do, okay? Just like it was in person exam. And don't forget and identify. Sometimes the students even forget to write their names. And also write down whether you're taking this course as a PGE 383, EER 396, or PGE 371. Do put down how are you taking this course. That's important. Yeah, that's all. That's all for now. And if something else comes up in my mind and I haven't told you, I don't think they will. I mean, if it does, I'll make sure in my next class I will I will announce it. Okay. Now let us go on with the reason we are here is to talk about project finance. I think the last time when we were in this class, last class, I had given you some references. I'm almost certain that 99 I did, but I may that 1% is in my mind that maybe I forgot. So to cover that 1%, I may not have done that, giving references. I'm going to cover myself now by giving it. It might be a repeat, but that's okay. It's better to repeat than to omit. Repeat or omit. I can't afford you to not have it and not omit. So repeat. For the exam, for the references for this today, for today's lecture, which will flow into next time also, I think very likely it will. And the references in the book that you purchased, whatever color it is from the university, reference number 19, that's the table of contents in the first part of the front table in the front of the book, reference 19, number 20 reference, number 22 reference, and number 25. I repeat, reference 19, 20, 22, and 25. Okay? Not that I'm going to cover everything that's in the reference, but you may find there are certain things that I'm talking here and will be delivering to you today. I got them from there, not everything, but a lot of the things. Okay. So now I'm also, so you can see there is a purpose of buying the book. But before that, I could not do that with references because those references of concepts and definitions were not from one chapter or two chapters. No, they were from my own knowledge, and God knows from I got that. So I could not give you reference for defining what's one word, and you'll have to look up the entire book searching for that word. So that way, now the references I've given. However, few, not all, few of the things that I have discussed in the earlier part of the course, such as definition, you can find some of them, not all, few of them, in reference number 5 in the book. The number 5 reference will help you in some of the things that we discussed before the spring break, not all, maybe 10%, 20% at the most. The rest came from myself directly talking to you from my own experience and knowledge. But and these 4 references are given you number 19, 20, 20, 20. We will have quite a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about, okay? So that means the book is useful. And it's a good book to have in your library anyway. So now, starting now, we will talk about the subject of project finance. I started it, I just initiated it, introduced you to the subject. That project finance, I said defining it is, with a bank. So you go to the bank and say, Mr. Banker, the subject is project finance, the lecture begins. I want a loan for this project. He said, good, let's talk about it. And the definition of subject finance really is that the banker relies exclusively on the cash flow generated by the project. And if it's a bad project, the banker will lose his own money also. So he's looking at the project from every possible way, and we're going to talk about that for the next 2 hours to make sure that he doesn't lose his money. He's going to cover his risk the best he can. This, I said, would be a prospective approach. In the future, the project does not exist. This is from last time's lecture. So you're looking at the future of the project. He's going to give you the money, you're going to start drilling. That's what the future is called, prospective, in the future. Many or most lending is based on balance sheet or income statement. And I defined balance sheet and income statement last time, where the company presents the income statement, how much income did they have last year, the year before, and so on and so forth. And the bank looks at that, the income that they're getting every year, is it enough to repay the loan? Okay. So they're looking at the back performance, from financial performance of the come back in the past. So that will be called a retrospective, going back. So we have two approaches: project finance and retrospective, project prospective and retrofit. Okay. Having said that, I think that's pretty much where we left off last time. That in case of project, in case of balance sheet, basing your decision, you being the banker on balance sheet, is historical. Okay, that's what I wanted to emphasize again. I'm still looking at what I covered last time. Okay. Now the question is, and as I said, this is a full lecture this time and maybe next time. Question is, let's talk with the project finance in the sense of, looking at the future of the project cash flow. The question comes up now: what are the advantages of project finance? Okay, to the borrower. You're the borrower. What are the advantages? There has to be advantages, and if we go this way, and what are the disadvantages? So there are many advantages to the borrower. I'll list a few of them. I'll cover it, and then we'll talk about a couple of disadvantages. Okay, just to make sure we don't. It's not only advantage; it's a combination of both. I'm looking at it. One is the advantage of what's a longer loan maturity period than conventional unsecured loan. I'll read it. Longer loan maturity period than conventional unsecured loan. By now, you know what is an unsecured loan, so we don't have to go into that. And normally, banks would like to have, if they're giving you an unsecured loan, to see if you can return the loan within 4 or 5 years. Okay, but if you're basing your loan borrowing based on project future cash flow, so you can stretch the term of the loan with the bank for maybe 8 or 10 years. A little bit time to start the project, drilling or so on and so forth. We're going to talk about the details again later on. This is just a start. And then another 5-7 years to generate enough cash flow to get the money back to the bank. So in that case, it could be longer, 10 years versus 5 years for a regular loan. Project finance can be extended for longer time. Next one is loan repayment. I'm going to explain it. Tailored, like a tailor, you can get your clothes tailored, stitched to the development of the project, oil field development and production. I talked about it previously in another context. When you have a project finance situation with the bank, you have no cash flow, but the project has not started. And then when the project starts, then it'll take another year, or depending on the size of the project, a year or two, for it to pick up speed, and then it peaks off, and then it plateaus and goes down in the cash flow, the production / cash flow. So in that case, you can tell the bank, Mr. Banker, let me restructure the repayment, how I'm going to give you back the loan, depending how the cash flow will come from the project. I gave you the example of this, I think, in case of a bit of that. Electric power generation. In the summer, it's very hot in Texas, and so you get more revenues coming, air conditioning and all. So you tailor, you pay bigger payment to the bank, the loan repayment, and spring, the revenue is coming in less because everybody's having a picnic outside, and that's the usage of power. So in that case, you can work with the bank and see if they can accept the repayment schedule depending on the electric utilities, a revenue stream, how it's coming in. Same thing here. You're drilling a well. The day you spud, you start drilling, and it's going to go down 10,000 feet, are you going to start getting revenue next day? No, like maybe a couple of years. You're going to not only drill and find oil, you could have a hookup to the pipeline and go to that, and so on. A long story. So sometimes you can work with the bank and say, Mr. Banker, during the first 2 years of the project, which is working, we're working on it, we're still drilling, we will only pay you the interest. Interest, they will never give up. But the principal amount, the loan amount, we will start paying you that after 2 years when we start getting a revenue stream. It's logical. First 2 years, we'll only pay you the interest on the entire loan or whatever amount you've taken from the bank, the loan. And after we start getting revenues and the oil is flowing, we will then add also the principal with the interest to pay you back. Okay? In bank, it's not given in the books. That kind of a loan, where initially the borrower is willing to only pay the interest initially. In banking terms, it is called a revolver loan. It's banking, it's not in the books. REVOLVER, revolver loan. You know revolver? That's what it's called. It's a banking terminology, where for the first year or two, you don't pay the principal at all to bring down the loan. You only pay the interest. In banking terminology, we called it a revolver, okay? I know I spelled it for you. Another advantage could be, bit of that we talked about earlier in some context, I can tell you, you might remember it. And that is that, how would I put it? Remember when you talked about loan agreement? I remember that. And I said in loan agreement, there are affirmative and negative covenants. What if you had made a covenant when borrowing the previous loan to the bank, that if bank, you give us a loan for in previous instance, we will not borrow any more money based on the balance sheet. So you already committed yourself. You already promised to the bank, no more will we borrow from you or anybody else. Give us the loan. But as you know, that'll be nothing. I promise. What if? But you did not promise that we cannot borrow based on project finance. You said we borrow based, we will not borrow based on balance sheet and income statement, the retrospective aspects of borrowing. We will borrow based on only the project cash flow. So it will be called off balance sheet financing. So that means even if you're peaked out, maximize your balance sheet financing loan from the bank, you still have a way and to now go around that way to get the loan from the bank based on the projects. Okay, that's another way. Of course, I don't have to explain that in every situation is going to be different. So I'm not saying everything I'm saying will apply to every situation, of course, okay? But one of the big advantages is project finance. The subject is project finance today, all project finance. If you're lucky, and you find a bank who says, okay, we will do project finance based on the future cash flow from the project, and they sign. So what is that? The biggest advantage, you have offloaded, you've passed your risk to the bank. The project bank goes back, the bank suffers. You don't suffer. I said, if you find a bank that is willing to do that. Most banks will not be willing to do it. They don't want to take a risk. And I said, if you find a bank, and there could be reasons why they may want to accept that on individual basis, in the cases. In that case, you transferred your risk to the bank. That can be an advantage in certain cases, undeniably. I think I say chapter 19 in the book, written it refers to this thing, the advantages, okay? And there are others too. Now, having said that, let us talk about the disadvantages of the situation project finance. As I said to you, it's very obvious that the bank is willing, if the bank is willing to take the risk, it doesn't come free. They are going to charge you a higher interest rate, of course. In America, we say there is no free lunch. You have to get something to get something. So if you want to get this project, it's okay. The interest rate will be 9% plus the risk will be another 1%. You pay us 10% because we're taking the risk and you're diminishing your risk. So you may, if you're willing to pay the higher interest rate, they may be willing to talk to you. Okay, common sense. If it were a loan, and we're going to talk about shortly, based on proved reserve in the ground, I'm going to talk, that's called production loan. That means there'll be more documentation required by the bank. And let's say if in the case of project finance, let's say if I were to build this, well, no, that might be stretching the imagination. So what it is before you said, bank, I want to borrow money for the reserves in the ground, they will insist, it's a secured loan, of course, in this case. They prove to us that this field or the reserves in the field, all field can belong to you. And show us the documents, produce the documents, and they're in the form of a title. Remember we talked about title and ownership? So the title could searching that the title, this belongs to this guy. It's a long, laborious, expensive process. But the bank says, how do I know it's yours? You just say that is mine and we find out it's not yours. We're not going to take that risk. So that would require more documents for you to produce to the bank. Expensive to collect those documents. That could be a disadvantage. Okay? In case of project financing. There's a next subject is characteristics of a project viable for characteristics of a project is the title, viable for financing. In other words, what do you look for that this project is good for financing? What does the bank look for? In this case, I said that the reference number 25, you might find some of my lecture there. I'm already giving. Just don't rely on the references only. Please just don't. That could be, well, very easy. I go, well, go to look at 25 and case closed, do it in your own time. I can go to sleep then. So I will be explaining some of the points that are what are the qualities of a project that the banker wants to see in the project before he financing the project, lending the money. What are the characteristics? Some of these that I'm going to go to the list now might be repeated again in today's lecture or tomorrow's lecture. Not all, some of them. Okay. So I'm going to cover some, and then subsequently in another context, I'll cover some more, maybe repeat some. So bear with me, quite a few will be handled now. There are like a dozen or so here. In case now we talk about what are the bank look for, what are the characteristics? Did I say reference number 25? Number one, clear, I've just gone over it 2 minutes back. Clear title to the oil and gas property, reserves, property reserves. Secured loan. Remember I just said that? How do I know it is your oil and gas reserves or field? I don't know, you got to produce the document. So that's the first thing in a secured loan the bank is going to ask for. Okay. The same thing is if we buy a house. First thing in buying a house, every single instance, and I've done it a few times, the bank is going to ask you to give me a title, that show me the title of the house. That's simple. The next one is called proven. Well, let's not confuse you with this. Clearly, I'm going to be careful. Clearly, or clear rather, clear definition of oil and gas reserves. Clear definition of oil and gas reserves. Now, this might require a little 10-15 minutes of explaining because it's an oil and gas course, financing. Clear definition of oil and gas reserves. All reserves are not the same, folks. Remember that. And I've been, whether I teach the energy finance course or I teach the petroleum agreements course on Fridays, I always go into a lengthy discussion of this subject. And you better pay attention to that. It's very important. You will need it whether you're going to finance it or not. You will need this information if and when you go for a job and you're employed. Now, in both classes, I teach this. Defined reserve, clear definition. And I was struggling for like this. Did I do this in the agreements class or did I do this in the, because I've had that class and this, and I'm saying, oh my goodness, if I did it in the agreements class, then I can go into detail in this class because you haven't heard this before. But if I already taught you previously in this class because I've forgotten, that means I'll have to repeat it and you might get bored. Say, Dr. Malik, you already told us that. So I've been struggling. Did I teach you here or not? I think I came up with a conclusion and I hope I'm right. I'm confessing that this question of defining reserves, I don't think I touched in this class. I know I've lectured it once in this semester, but 90% I'm certain I lectured in the agreements class because it belongs there also. So I'm taking now the assumption that I did not do it here in this class. Therefore, I'm going to go into detail of that. And in any case, it is an important subject and there's no harm listening it to the second time if you've not heard it, if you've heard it before, okay? Now, having built a case of defining proof, this is clear definition of proof oil and gas proved oil. I have asked the question gardeners in every lecture given anywhere in the world, and rarely, maybe 10 people out of the 1,000, have these so-called people working in big buildings in the oil business have ever given me the correct definition of what is a proved reserve. They all beat around the world, oh, proved reserve. No. Tell me what is a proved reserves. So pay attention to this. I'm assuming you have not heard this before, in any lecture of mine before. So let me get to the point. Take note of it. A proved reserve, and I'm going to get up and write it. Oil and gas reserves in the ground are those that can be produced at current oil and gas price. Let's write it down. Please pay attention to this important subject. I'm going to show you, look at all the pens I have. And there are more pens here. And there are more pens like this over here. Now, why do I have to show you? I don't know why it's the problem. I've spent more money buying these pens from Office Depot than anything else. Because I don't know why. After I've written 2 or 3 or 5 words, it dries up, the pen. There's a black pen dries up. So I have to maybe sometimes wait for a day or maybe an hour, and then I can write another word. Then I go to the second black pen. You notice there are 3, 4 black pens, and I can get 2 words from there. Then I go to the blue pen. Maybe I can write with the blue color. Then same thing. So constantly I'm juggling pens, hoping I can write clearly. I write it like big and dark so you can read it. So there is this word, if you can't read, it's called, number 3 is existing, because at that point, and the black pen gave up. So the next 2 fiscal terms, I had to get a new black pen. So that's why you see fiscal is a little bold, dark. Sympathize with me because I'm trying my very best for making life easy for you so you can read it. Anyway, you've understood. So therefore I read it sometimes. So if you can't read it, write it, or I speak it myself so that if you can't read it, you can at least, if you can't hear it, and if you can't read it, you can at least hear it. That's the point. So I've already written number 1, 2, and 3. Pay attention to that. It'll be easy. You have a simple example. Most people, trust me, 99% people on the big towers of Exxon and Chevron and BP, all no idea. How do I know? I've lectured to them. Believe me, there isn't a company left in the world that I'm not lectured to. I'm an old man, must have been around a few times around the world constantly. To be considered or to be, this is called nomenclature. Nomenclature, word. Nomenclature, nomenclature, English word. You don't have to definition is good now, but I want to also add some words to particularly the foreign students to improve their vocabulary. Okay, that's all. I go beyond just teaching the subject. I want to make sure you get more from me than just learning about what is current, what is existing. So to be, no, let's get to the point. To be called a reserve proved, it must meet three criteria. Three. One, conditions criteria. The reserve that you can produce under current oil price or prices or gas price. Today, current is today. Write it down. What that means is, in the Gulf of Mexico, if the price goes down to $2 a barrel, will I produce from the Gulf of Mexico? No. So all the oil in the Gulf of Mexico cannot be considered proved under definition of what I've given you. Is the oil still there in the Gulf? Oh, of course it's there. I didn't drink it. It's still there, sitting there. But it is not called proved. Proved. Number two. No, for at $2, I'm not going to produce it. It's not called proved. However, the price goes to $300 a barrel. Am I going back to produce from the Gulf of Mexico? Yes, I am. So all the oil that I took out from the proved category at 300, I will put it on dollars. I will put it back in the proved category. I didn't drink it. It's still there, but I cannot call it now proved, depending on the price scenario. And the second very important or equally important factor to consider to call it proved is the technology that you know now, not the future. Example. I was lecturing to one of the largest drilling companies in the whole world, the name called Saipem, S-A-I-P-E-M. They also have offices in Houston. They're all over the world. And their chairman has been my student too. And they have a ship, the drilling vessel, you can call it. They call it Saipem 1100. That's what they told me. And the reason they said we call it 1100 is because Saipem has the technology today, that's the deepest drilling that can be done, that Saipem, the vessel can drill down to 11,000 feet, so they call it 11,000, Saipem 11,000. So what's the point? Today they can drill to 7. Yesterday they could only drill to 7,000 feet in offshore. I'm talking offshore, not onshore. Remember, that's all about, that's why I say vessel or offshore. Yesterday they couldn't. They only had 7,000 feet capacity to drill offshore. So yesterday the reserves could not be classified as proved, but today they can be because the technology is there to produce at 11,000 feet. Typically, these are the two that are considered to call proved, but I insist on one more, that's mine, is number 3. That's I put a dash, I said, that's my idea, is reserve that you can produce under existing, that's the word, fiscal terms. Write that down. You're not going to find it in the book. What does fiscal mean? Fiscal means taxes, the reserves that you can produce under existing tax regime. If the government of Namibia says the oil price, no, the taxes are 99%, Mr. Oil Company, are you staying or leaving Namibia? I'm taking the next flight out of Namibia. I cannot call my reserves in Namibia proved anymore. Remember that. If they reduce the taxes to 3%, I'm going back and start producing from Namibia. So all the reserves that I took out from the proved category, they're still there. The category classification all the reserves at $3 that I took out at 3%, at 98, sorry, all the reserves that I took out from as a result of 98% taxation in Namibia, now I'll put them back in the 3% taxation. So all these factors, this is the part people don't understand. All these, no, before I get into that, I'm going to come to that. It's an important point. Pay attention. Did I make up this definition? No, I did not. Who did? I'm just a messenger. I wrote on here what? SEC and SPE. There's not mine. Definition. SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. You'd know about it. We've talked about it. They have a lot of petroleum engineers working for SEC, the government of the United States. You look for a job, write to them. Securities and Exchange Commission, this is their definition. And SPE, Society of Petroleum Engineers, with over 100,000 members all over the world. Not my definition. This is, they said, tell the students, this is the definition. I'm telling you what they told me to tell you. So let me take you to an extremely important point which people don't understand. Nor do you at this time, till I show it to you. For the reserves of X amount, they say, well, here in this field, there are 100 million barrels of reserves, this field. And it's proven, no. These reserves can change up and down. People don't understand. Tomorrow, the reserves can go down to 90 million, 90 or 100 or 90 million, change tomorrow, or up to 150 million. Why? Because if the oil price changed last night, you can't call some of the reserves in the proved category, so you have to lower them. If the price goes up, you have to increase. So it is a function of not only of technology, but also of oil price. You can go up and down. People who are not a petroleum, you don't understand. How can you say it's proved yet it's going to go up and down? That's the way it is. So for these things, to have fixed certain amount of oil reserve, you have to fix these 1, 2, and 3 parameters. You fix these 3, you'll have a certain fixed number of proved reserve. You change any one of these that you see in the board, you change the amount of proved reserves. I hope it is clear. It's so basic. It's common sense. And you say, Dr. Malik, we don't believe you. Yeah, I know you're going to say that. I came prepared for that. I will make you believe it. How? No, that's an agreement. Because I show in agreements class, because it's a policy question, I saw that based on oil price, you look, if the price goes down, the reserves go down. I actually have an example. I just realized that's in the other class. You have to take that class to see that example. I can show you here, but then you'll be going into the other class, and I've got to still finish this class syllabus first. And so that's where I got confused. There I actually show you. Actually, I show you with the help of a real life example, real field, that in the field I change the oil price and the reserves change up and down. There are 2 taxes. I change the royalty, which is taxes, and the reserves go up and down without doing anything. But forgive me because I got there. I said, well, after halfway into my lecture, I said, well, boy, this is what I'm going to tell you. It's in the other class, and you don't have even that example up in front of you, because I gave this class the whole 1 hour to look at that example. So you don't have that. It's not a part of this course. Anyway, but just take my word for it then. Okay, So they can go up and down depending on oil price. I just told you, go down to $2 a barrel. That's it. Now, lower it. At $100, you increase the amount of reserve. But that's less important for your purposes. For your purposes, that belongs more in the other class. Policy, it's a policy thing. But what is more important for your finance purposes is the next thing I'm going to tell you, which is, I said, more important. So let's give you more time. The proved reserves are divided into two categories. Why do I have to say that? Learn this, because bankers always want those two categories, reserves divided into two categories, which I'm going to tell you. No, that's where this becomes very relevant to you when you go to the bank or you work for the bank. And I always dealt with these categories. So let me write down. It's going to be a little detailed information. But you're going to learn something that is more relevant for you than the definition of this SC business that I gave you. I'm going to let it sit there for about 30 seconds for it to dry up. Because I'm using, see, this is a little liquid here to clean the board. And if you see it's a little moist or wet, so this cleans it better. So I have to wait till this dries up on the board. I'm going to show you that here I go with the new stack. There are no, supposed to be four here. So I'm going to look for a new one. It's a brand new one. How long it'll last, I don't know. You can see my struggling. This is an absolutely new one. Because the other one I'm not writing anymore. Not to belabor the point, it's a brand new one and that's already done. You see, non-producing, I can't even write now. It's a brand new one. Let me see if I can see it. Some other evidence might have. I hope you can read this. I hope that you can read all this, draw all this. I'm going to pin every one because from a finance banking point of view, this is very, very important, okay? How much money they're going to give depends on which box do you fall in, the company falls in, which box are the reserves. If the reserves are in this box, they give you this much. If the same reserves fall in this box, they'll give you this much, okay? So I always required the companies, when they came to me at Barclays Bank, before I gave them any money, bring this chart done by the independent consultant, what he has done with your reserves, which category did he put it? This is called classification. And so make sure you write it down. Incidentally, by the way, this is universally accepted classification. You go to any consultant in America, he will produce this chart for you. He will break down the reserves into different categories or classification. This is a category or classification. And so we know exactly what he's talking about. It's just generally accepted. And all the consultants, 90% of the consultants, when they hire petroleum engineers like you, this is what they end up doing. Petroleum consultant, young people like you forget to look for a job with consulting company called DeGolyer and McNaughton. D is in David and M. They do this. Core Laboratory, Core. Okay. Ryder, R-Y-D-E-R. Ryder Scott. And many more. I've looked at the economic and reserve evaluation of all of these firms when I was at the bank. Valuation of all reserves in the ground. Okay. And no harm checking with them, you know. There's one over here in Austin on 360. They used to have an office. One of the principal person in the company was a professor at our department. He has since passed away. It's called Platt, P-L-A-T-T. Platt and Sparks, S-P-A-R-K-S. An associate, Platt, Sparks, and associate. They're on 360. Okay, now. Last time, I was telling you how to get a job with the World Bank, 1818 8th Street. Now I'm telling you how to get a job with a consulting firm. And he said, well, I want to stay in Nice. Now I'm going to tell you how do you get a job in a firm here in Austin. And that was one of my important criteria when I was looking for a job 100 years ago, from after graduate. And I just didn't want to leave Austin. Austin was not what it is. Now it is a beautiful, better than any place I've ever been in my life. Now, of course, traffic, another problem, but then it is great. Anyway, so on the top, what do you see? Right at the top is proved reserves. So when you have those criteria, you know, reserves that you can produce under existing technology and all this stuff, you put them here at the top, proved reserves, okay? Proved reserves, as you can see, are divided into two categories. On the left here is proved developed reserves, and the right is proved undeveloped reserves. Sometimes, abbreviate, it's called acronym in America, AC acronym, something like ACORY. Acronym, ACR, acronym, ACRONYM. Boy, can you imagine? I'm forgetting even how to spell the word acronym. Acro is ACRO, NYM, NYM, I think. I'm almost certain. How the acronym means you take the first alphabet of every word, you make it into another word to make it easy to remember, like United Nations Organization acronym will be UNO. United Nations, and that's what is called an acronym in English. So the acronym for proved undeveloped is PUD. Some people just say PUD. I don't like the word PUD. Doesn't sound nice. Doesn't look very dignified. So what's the difference between proved developed and proved undeveloped? Very simple. It's drilled. If you don't like the word developed, you call it drilled. So on the side where it says proved developed, that means these reserves have been drilled. Okay? But in engineering and petroleum, we call it developed. Proved undeveloped, we don't call it, we call it, these are reserves that have not been drilled, not developed, not drilled. Okay? So that should be easy to remember. Let's stay on the left side, mostly, almost all of it, this side, left side. The left side proved developed is divided into two categories. One is proved developed producing category. Acronym PDP is very obvious. That means these reserves have been drilled, developed, and they're producing. There's not much I can say about it. The other is proved developed non-producing. The acronym is PDNP. That means these reserves have been drilled, but they're not producing. All gas reserve, gas or oil or gas is not. Why are they not producing is your question. If they're drilled. 100 reasons. Well, let's say they can be divided into two categories. The PDNP. One is called the shut-in category. On the top, you can see the shut-in. And the other one is called behind pipe. If you can't read it, I'm just calling it out. You can write it yourself. Behind the pipe. These are two examples of PDNP. Let's take up shut-in. Why are they are able to produce, but they're not producing? Maybe there's a market problem. There could be a surplus of oil. Nobody wants your oil. And just because you can produce oil does not mean you can sell your oil. And there's a market. Example, you can take this note if you want. 1979, in 1979, OPEC countries produced 31 million barrels of oil a day. 31. Look up and you'll find it. In 1983, that is after 4 years, 79 to 80 is 4 years, OPEC was producing what? 17 only. Only 17 million barrels of oil per day in 1979, they were producing 31. In 1983, they were producing 17. That means there were 14 million barrels. 31 minus 17 is 14 million barrels per day. They had the capacity, but there was no market. Nobody wanted it. Too expensive. So that meant they had to shut in. That is when quotas were introduced, by the way. So there is an example of not enough demand for oil. And that can give you many. The second category of not producing, and they can be, the drill is called behind the pipe. You can see behind the pipe just above my shoulder. Let's talk about behind the pipe. What does that mean? I'm going to take it off, let it rest for about a second so that it dries up, and so I can start again to explain what is behind pipe. Okay. Now the explanation for behind the pipe. Let us say you start drilling, you started drilling, let us say that. And you have a target depth of what? 10,000 feet. You're drilling, you're going to go down 10,000 feet. This is 4,000 from here to 4,000. This is 6,000. Target total is 10,000 feet. So as you're drilling from here, you're going to go to 10,000. You find out that down at 4,000 feet, there's a formation A from which you can produce oil because you struck oil at A. But your target is how much? 10,000. So you put this A behind the pipe formation, although you can produce, but you're not because your target is 10,000. So you put this formation behind, and then you keep going another 6,000 feet till you come to formation B. And at formation B, you're very lucky. You find oil in B also. So you got oil in A, oil in formation B. So the rule is, and this A is sitting behind the pipe while you're drilling to B, the rule is that the first thing you should do is to produce first from formation B. First you go to formation B for, let's say, 7 years. You produce from formation B for 7 years till you deplete formation B. Then you plug formation B, no more oil. And then here is the pipe, remember the pipe? Then you perforate formation A after 7 years and start using from formation A after 7 years. So after you depleted formation B. So that's after 7, for 7 years while you're waiting, this formation A sitting behind the pipe. Okay. That is the meaning of pipe. Now, let us look into this story here in order to explain everything here. Now I'm going to try to explain. Then after I explain this PUD business, then I'll explain why did I keep emphasizing that the categories are important, which category you're giving the money to if you're a banker, and it's important. The risk involved, I'll tell you in a minute. Here we have 4 wells, A, B, C, and D, okay, black. All these are good producing wells. But in the middle, this red here, you don't see any well, do you? But all around it, there is activity, oil drilling, and oil producing. So what do you think, common sense, that what is the chance that if you drill here in this location, the red, which is surrounded by oil well producing all around, what is the chance that you will find oil here also at the red circle if you drill? Very, very high, because all around is oil, right? So then this is for future drilling in case you want to continue. It's a location, so it's called a drilling location now. This here, oil underneath my hand here, will be considered proved undeveloped, okay? That's it. So I've explained to you what does all this mean. And I emphasized that it is important for the bank to come up with each category, whether it's proved developed, proved non-developed, producing, produced non-producing, or proved, because each category that I've just listed has a different level of risk for the company, the bank. If somebody from the bank came to me and said, sir, we got all reserves that are producing, proved producing, give me $100,000. Here is a check. That's it. Because there's no risk. I know it's producing. Where is the risk? There's no risk. So as you move away from producing, you come up with different categories. For example, if it's shut in, I'll probably say, how much do you want? 100? I'll give you $85 or $85 million. Because maybe the market will not pick up in 1 year, maybe it'll take 3. There's a risk. You go further. Or behind the pipe, well, I'll give you $70. And if it's proved undeveloped, maybe I won't give you anything. I don't know if there's oil under the red mark there. Maybe I'll give it to 5%. So you can see, this is all in the mind of the banker. I used to look at it that way, because it's an assessment of the risk. One banker might say, no, I'll give you, on undeveloped, I'll give you $25 out of the 100 you want. I said, no, I won't give you any. He's right or I'm right. I don't know. We'll find out. When the whole thing is done, after 15 years, we'll know what happened. So therefore, these categories that I keep talking about are quite important, as you can see. Okay. Having said that, I'm looking at the watch, and I think it's fair, because I've been going non-stop. Believe me, it's not easy. While you're having coffee and eating your, what do you eat? Nice thick steak dinner, and I'm not. So I'll take, let's take a 10-minute, very brief break, 10 minutes, and then we'll continue for another 30 minutes, and we'll go. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break and continue with characteristics of project viable financing. I only cover 2, therefore more to cover. Okay, take your time, 10 minutes, I shall be back. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I hope all of you are back. Okay, so before we took the break, we were looking at the various characteristics, qualities of a project that was worthy, of being worthy, being was eligible, was able to get financing from the bank. And one we said was that it should have clear title to the oil and gas reserves. It's all about oil and gas reserves. We spent a good amount of time defining universally accepted definition of what are oil and gas reserves and how their nomenclature, how they're divided into different categories, very important. And now we have to also, from the bank point of view, again, if I may say, the bank is going to look at it somewhat similar to what the sponsor is looking at. If I'm the sponsor, I want the money and I want to start the project, I'm going to look at 100 different things. Pretty much, bank is going to look at most of those things also, okay? So put yourself in the position of the bank. They're going to say, well, if it was their project or if it's project finance, they may end up this being their project. If it's not money they're going to get back from the sponsor, then they will have to answer the same question that I'm asking myself when I start the project. So the third characteristic is financial viability of the project. The bank wants to look at it. Essentially, you say, well, this should be the responsibility of the sponsor, the one who's starting the project, the company. Yes. Potential viability means, is this project going to generate a good rate of investment? Is it a good project financially? Is there a rate of investment they're going to get back attractive? Is it going to be higher than the interest rate they're going to pay us? If the rate of return on the investment by the company is lower, is 9%, and the interest is 12%, is it economically viable? Of course not. So the bank is going to look at that. Say, how in the world are you going to pay me back the money? Because your project is only generating 9% return, and we want 12% interest rate. You're going to steal somewhere the 3% to give it back? No. We're not going on that project, sir. You may get money from somebody else. We're not part of this story. That's economic viability, okay? For financial viability. Another factor that we looked at, same as what I would look at if I'm the company, the market for the oil and gas at a price that is reasonable. I just gave you the example of OPEC. They had the ability to produce oil, but they were not market. Nobody wanted to buy it in 1980, in late 1970. And worst situation was with gas, by the way. We in the United States, I know I was in banking at that time. And I was obliged, part of my job description was to develop studies like you do at the university, research term papers. Number one was my job. What is the what is the outlook for the refining industry, number one, in America or worldwide? What is the outlook for the offshore drilling industry, number two? What was the offshore of the onshore drilling industry, number three? All these, I had to do 5 studies to study the marketplace. After doing it, my studies were sent all over the branches around the globe. So just saying it's a good project does not mean, yes, technically it's good, but does it have a product that it will produce that can be sold, marketed? Is there a need for that somewhere by somebody? So market of the product is vital. In this case, it's oil and gas. What about transportation? Many kinds of questions come out with transportation. Many kinds of questions. Let's take only 1 or 2 now. The oil is never found in downtown Manhattan. I don't know why, it's just never in downtown Manhattan or London, downtown. It's almost always in very, very, very remote areas. In the deserts of Saudi Arabia or the wilderness of the North Slope, it's called the North Slope in Alaska, very far away. So is the refinery there in Alaska? No. The nearest refinery is in California. So what's the question? If the bank wants to know, tell us how you're going to transport the oil from Alaska to refineries in California. Is there available transportation? Very important question. You just don't take the project. Here is the project, Mr. Bank, give me the money. You're looking at all of those things, the bank and the company itself. Equally important, all are important factors to look at. What about the expertise of the people working for the company? Do they have the experts in water flood? If the project is about water, do they have the experts in tertiary recovery, thermal recovery, or miscible recovery, or chemical flooding? Have they done it before? Have they demonstrated expertise? The bank wants to know that. Is it the first time they're tackling a project like this one? So that is availability of expertise in the area in which the project involved. They don't have it, you're going to kill the project. Bad investment. Do the processes involve unproven new technology? You know, when you go into some process involved in this project, has the technology been proven? I'll give you an example in oil and gas. In some cases, some people think okay. Water flood is quite understandable. It's not a very difficult technology. It's been around for quite a while. But what was thermal? What miscible recovery? What was chemical flooding? Tertiary recovery? Are all technologies are equal? That is what I want to know, Mr. Company. I'm a banker. Sometime this was like 40 years back. Even for water flooding, which is so common, I would refrain, stay away from projects that had water flooding. For me, that was too risky still. For another bank, maybe not. It's a personal judgment. It's conservative versus not conservative, maybe. Less risky versus more risky. It's a personal judgment. Its risk is all over here. And I gave you, I think I did, give you the story of, what can you make the company successful, or take a good company and kill it. Because that's just so much to so many people. I sometimes say, well, maybe I already told you that, but this may not be the time to tell all stories, but this may be time in case I did tell a story about somebody asked me, how do you make a company successful? This was in Kazakhstan. This was a real question. Sir, how do you make a company successful? I said, very simple. Lot has to do with management. If you have a beautiful garden, and this is exactly the example I gave, and you find a useless gardener, he does not know when to water the plant, what will happen to your garden? He'll kill it. Garden. And if you have a good gardener and he's got a few, roots in the backyard, and he knows when to water it, when to put the fertilizer, he'll make those roots look like a beautiful garden with a lot of, flowers. So it's the same thing with company. You have good management, you can take a average company, make it great. If you got a bad management, you can take a great company and kill it. So that's the point, is availability of management. Big difference. Because why are the managers paid so much? The engineers are doing all the work. Oh, and there's some engineers become managers too, of course. Because they can make or break the company. And then there are many kinds of managers, the financial manager and the technical and geological manager, the drilling manager, but that's subsection of management. Okay. Availability of management personnel, write that down. Have you written it? Let's take up another one. Does the project have a value that it can be used as collateral or security? What if you have a project and if it goes bad, nobody wants it? Maybe it doesn't have much of a value. The bank wants to know what is the value of the project, that we can, if we need to, go and sell it. Show us, is it something that has a value that can serve as a security for a secured loan? You see, all these little items are adding up, all of them. Before the bank says, okay, we'll give you the loan. It's not you walk into the bank, hey, Mr. Banker, I need so much, here's the project. No. Forget it, it doesn't happen like that. Very important. Government approvals. Especially, I don't want to cast any judgment. In some countries, in most countries, I would say, in the developed, government approvals are just not there in time. They're delaying and they're delaying and they're delaying and they're delaying for no reason. What if you had a schedule that this project will start in the next 9 months, and you're lining up customers for your product that is coming out of the project, and you think it will be ready to go deliver the product in 9 months, and you find out the government is not letting you pass the first gate. You're always saying, we want this information, we want this information, we want this. You cannot move an inch without approval. You cannot. Just the government is the body that says, no, you can't. So before the bank says, we'll give you the money. And what are they going to ask? Show us. which all departments are involved from the government side in approving this project, and show us where are the signatures of the government officials that they have approved the project. Delay in projects can kill, and I'll come back to that later on again. Delay in projects because the government is not approving it on time. And I feel sometimes they just don't want to do it. They just, I know, I don't want to say that lady. More so in developing, well, it's all over the world. I don't know. I have a strange theory. You go to the government officer of, let's say, in some country very remote, and the officer, you drive in your Tesla, you know, a big fancy Tesla. The government official isn't paid like you're paid by a foreign oil company. He's paid the lowly salary of a government official. He comes over in the bicycle to his office. You're riding a Tesla. And you think, boy, I've got a Tesla, he's going to buy. Maybe, I don't know psychology. Maybe he said, well, look here, Johnny, to heck with your Tesla. If I don't approve your Tesla, I don't care. I have the power now. Bicycle it is, power I have. The moment he gives you the permission and approval, where is the power? He's got zero. I don't know. I'm trying to I'm trying desperately to understand why the government people don't just approve. I just can't. If it is a legitimate reason, I can understand. But many times these are not legitimate reasons, believe me. I cannot think of another reason. I'm not saying this is the reason. I'm just struggling to understand what other could there be a reason. Governments are there to help the industry or the business. On the other hand, it's the other way around. Why? Ask them, I don't know. The bank wants to know, the fellow who's riding on a bike, did he approve it? Forget your Tesla. We don't care your Tesla. He has got the authority. He doesn't approve, the project doesn't get done. You don't have the product going on, product doesn't sell, and you're not getting revenue, and you're not paying us back the loan. And here is the bankruptcy problem. Now we'll end up owning your project and we don't like it. And guess what? Another one, I don't know, 10 or 11 ideas I've already given you. I think it's 11. I may have skipped one or two, but if you look up reference 25, you'll see all of these. Politics. Political environment can be divided. One is stable politically. We've talked about political stability. Is the government politically stable? Are they new in power? Do they know what they're doing? Do they know what they're doing? If the old government was in a certain political party, the new government is in this new political party, and maybe they have a problem with each other. The old political party approved your project, and the new one said, we don't care, we don't like the government, they're gone. You can't help it. Exaggerated case that it is. You're caught in the middle. You just caught in the middle. You're helpless. You have nothing to do with this government. You actually do they spell out? Do these things get spelled out in black and white? This is the reason we're not giving you approval unless it's a legitimate reason. No, you just have to reach into the mind and see what could be the real reason. So political environment has to be stable. Okay. Now one more, maybe we call it the last one. No company, no bank is going to give you what you ask for. That's called 100% equity. They always want to know how much of your own equity, your own money are you going to put in the project. So we've talked about it before. How much? That proves many things to them. If the sponsor, the people who are going to start the project don't have their money invested, how much is the interest that is successful? High or low? Very low. They say, okay, if it doesn't go, it doesn't go. I'm not losing anything. If I've got $10 million invested out of $30 million project, and the project goes back and I lose the project and it's $10 million loss to me, you better believe it. I'm not sleeping at night. So the government wants to know how much of your own money you're putting up as a risk here. You're not putting up any, forget it. I'm not giving any. That we don't have a confidence in this project. If you have a confidence, you'll put up half the money, 1/3 of it, at least yourself, called equity. That is so important. No company, no bank will give you 100%. And I don't know, I can understand. Don't expect them to. If I were a banker, I'm not going to give you. So whatever I tried to do in the last, half an hour now, after the break, I've tried to open your mind. Have I shared with you something supernatural information that nobody could understand? No, it's all that I said is common sense. At least I've made a list of 10 or 11 or 12 points. There are many more. We can't be spending all our time on these points. So that it opens your mind, just to give you an idea. That project finance versus balance sheet. Balance sheet is something else. That's historical. They can see it black and white in your reports. Here, the project is in the future. We don't know whether there will be market for your gas in the future. I don't know. Remember, project finance looking at perspective. Whether this technology thing you're propagating is going to work or not, I don't know. If it is in the past, that's a different. Again, the bank has to have some guarantees or surety. One way is, okay, you put up half your money, then I know you are serious about it. So here is, look up chapter 25, and you'll see some of these things, maybe all of you, I forget, maybe all of these are there, or most of them are there. I will tend to stop now and start fresh. I'm looking at how much more to go on project finance and how long will it take. Many of the points will be repeat from today's lecture. Some may be added to the subject of what are the risks involved in project finance. Some might be additional information what bankers look for in project finance. It is in reference 22, what bankers look for in project finance. Take note of it. Then there is in that chapter, I think there is talk about risk associated with project failure. We'll talk about that. Then there's a reference to it. I'm giving advance notice. You can look it up if you want. There are different types of project financing techniques. That's coming up. There's only not one. There are 3 types I will talk about. What are the differences? Then there's reference number 25. What is the role of a consultant in project? What does he do? What does he do? How does he help the bank? That is about all that I've just listed, 3 or 4 points that we will address in project finance that have not been addressed. Probably will take up, to give you a timetable, not all of that lecture. I don't think it'll take up, depending on how deep I want to go, maybe more than half of the things that I've talked about, that I've listed in the 4 chapters or so, will be covered, if not all of it. I don't think it'll be all of it. And after that, we'll move on to either or, depending on the time of day, my mood and all that stuff. It has to do a lot with what mood I'm in. We might move to the subject of oil price, maybe, which everybody will say, or mergers and acquisition, exciting topics, both of them. So I'll think over in which one I go for, this or that, and then we'll wrap up. We're getting closer to the end before the final exam. Okay, don't forget it. It's coming, it's on the way. Take care of yourself, don't worry too much about it. Enjoy yourself and review your notes And look at the tape before the final exam. Okay. Have a good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you have when you're watching this. I'll catch you next time. Best of luck and thank you.